Yeah, so let's just get into it. We're talking about Reminiscence on HBO Max. Hugh Jackman, Rebecca Ferguson. You did not like it. I did like it. It's currently 38% on Rotten Tomatoes, so I'm definitely on the losing end of the battle here.
I know.
So
I'm excited to see if you can change my mind.
Yeah. I've just learned I can't change minds. I just give opinions and offer maybe some different insights, and so we'll see. Because I don't. Yeah, we'll see. So yeah, I figured the best way to structure it is, we just talk about 3 things that we liked or disliked about it. And I'll take the like. So I'll start just so we start on a positive note. I like it mostly because it's just this callback to film noir. It's this, it's where things get bad before they get bad. And it's this kind of struggle that people have when they're in kind of this depressed situation and just trying to figure life out and trying to find some kind of semblance of love and hope, whether they reach it or not. And I really feel like Reminiscence really hit on that and really brought back that old feeling of those old noirs with this sci-fi twist added to it.
As you know, I recently published a book on haunted houses, but I don't know if you know that the book that I published before that was about private detectives set in Los Angeles in film and television. So I'm a little bit of an expert in those sort of detective stories that you were talking about.
And you've seen more than I have.
I've seen a lot, and
you studied it.
Yeah, and let's just say that I did not like Reminiscence, and that was one of the reasons that I didn't like Reminiscence.
So where does it miss the mark in terms of the history of noir?
Oh my God.
Maybe the worst one.
It's kind of like, reading the story of the Titanic and being like, so where did things go wrong? But I think it clearly desperately wanted to reference, the Humphrey Bogart, Big Sleep kind of narratives. But okay, here's actually a good point. So one of the tropes of those kinds of movies is that they always kind of start off with something small. And in my book, I liken it to when there's like a stray thread on a sweater and you're like, oh, I'll just give that a little tug. And then you tug and then, the entire sweater unravels. So that's something that you see a lot of in these movies, right? So if you think about The Big Sleep, for instance, Humphrey Bogart is brought in to look for this rich guy's missing daughter. And then before you know it, it suddenly become all about pornography and drugs and trafficking and all this stuff. And that's sort of the trope that it's like it always starts off with something small and then suddenly becomes something big.
Yeah.
So
that definitely wasn't there.
What's that? Well,
that definitely wasn't.
Well, yes and no. So one of the things that I think was really frustrating for me about Reminiscence is just like how much missed potential the film had. And there are all these major issues happening. Like, for instance, in your backdrop, right? This idea of climate change in Miami underwater and all that, the kind of dystopia, which could have been fascinating, except that the movie never really gets into it, right? And we're told a little bit about the land barons, and we're told a little bit about this war that, shall not be named. And there are all these sort of larger issues. There are issues of class and income inequality and all this stuff. But instead, for the entire movie, the Hugh Jackman character is sort of obsessively focused on, I don't even know if he's focused on finding, but I don't even know if he's focused on finding her so much as he's focused on trying to figure out if she was conning him. Was their love genuine? And it's like all these other really interesting things are happening all around him. But unlike with the detective trope, where it does become all about these bigger issues, it's like the movie sort of very single-mindedly is like, we're just focusing on the dame. We're just focusing on the dame. So
yeah, and I kind of, that was you made a point that I thought about during the film, and it is this world that they're in, where the ocean levels have risen, and Miami is probably, I'd say, 20 feet underwater at this point, maybe 30 feet. And I kept thinking, that it's there and they don't address it. And, this could have been done at any point. This could have been done in the West. This could have been done, at some, tragic moment in Earth's history. But at the same time, as it was going on, I was just enjoying it for just being there. Just and that's the second thing that I liked about the movie was the kind of the world they built. Yeah, they don't address any of it at all. They make allusions to it, but it's just there, and I just kind of liked the way the world looked. I liked just the design of it, and yeah, it's not necessary, but I felt like it was not only an accent to the story, but a good accent to the story, and I just found it fascinating at that point. Just the fact that they're even though they're barricaded behind 30 feet of water, they're still running through about 4 inches of it on the street constantly.
Sure. I just want a little bit more from my movies.
That's a thing where, it's kind of like, does there need to be a balance? And it sounds like you were looking for it. And I was kind of like not really caring for the balance and just letting it be, so to speak.
I felt like the most interesting things in the movie were not addressed.
Mm-hmm.
So like, I found Hugh Jackman to be kind of boring, or his character to be kind of boring. I found May's character to be kind of boring. I was interested in Hugh Jackman's business partner. I thought her character seemed really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to know more about her. She seemed like a real badass. The Asian gangster, I thought, seemed really compelling. I wanted to know more about him. So it was like everything that the movie didn't give me was what I wanted to know more about.
I will say that this is not exactly Hugh Jackman's greatest performance. He's okay in it to me. He's certainly done better in other films. And I think the what I'm feeling is the biggest criticism of it is, it's such a big world that's painted here, but a very small story. And I think people wanted something larger from that story. And to me, I think I did appreciate that small story of this guy who's obsessed with May, Rebecca Ferguson's character, and the lengths that he will go to, I guess he'll use it's like he wants to be with her. And he uses that as an excuse to make compromising choices along the way, choices that, like a good noir, just kind of makes things worse and puts himself more and more in danger. And things don't end up so clean at the end. And so I'm thinking, I think from what I read from other people or what other people told me about the film is, they just wanted more. And so maybe the difference in scale comes off as more bland than anything.
Well, and I also want to qualify by saying that it's not that I have a problem with small stories. I think the issue here isn't that the story at the heart of the film is too small. I guess the issue is that I wanted it to be simpler.
Mm-hmm.
So I think part of the problem with the movie, which is because I think you can have a movie, for instance, that's like, set in the middle of World War II, and that is about like a very, sweet, simple relationship between two soldiers, for instance. It's not like, for a movie to be good, it has to have 8,000 different plot points. I think the problem with this specific dynamic is that it gets too complicated, and then you just kind of get confused over what's supposed to be happening, and that also made it harder for me to care about those characters.
Yeah,
if that makes sense. So the issue wasn't that it was too small, but that it was too complicated.
Yeah, so maybe that if it were set in LA in the 50s, and just along city streets and in regular buildings, that it probably would have been better. Is that or you might have seen it in a different light. Just get rid of all the natural disaster aspect of it.
Well, I think yes. I mean, I think that's the movie has many problems, so it's not just like, oh well, here's the one thing. But I definitely think that
if they had gotten rid of if they had taken out the natural disaster, the climate change aspect of it, it would have made it a little bit of a better film.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
There we go. All right.
Or maybe even just cut out some of the flashbacks. I don't know. It's kind of like, I feel like for me, the movie was this very kind of like hodgepodge homage / ripoff to Inception meets Strange Days meets Blade Runner, where it's sort of like it's
meets
not
Chinatown.
Meets China. I mean, yeah, exactly. Except
there's a lot of Chinatown in this as well.
There's a lot of Chinatown, but even like Chinatown, it's like you wouldn't set Chinatown in the middle of like the apocalypse.
Yeah.
It's like, again, you got to streamline things a little bit. I don't know. Whenever I see movies like Reminiscence, I'm always wondering, like, someone gave the script a green light. It was kind of like, I don't know why the script didn't get a little bit more work before they started filming.
Yeah. Well, I will also say that in Chinatown, they don't go to Chinatown until the last 20 minutes of the movie.
True.
So
maybe if they hadn't gone to Florida until the last 20 minutes of the movie, then this could have been saved.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the gimmick of the movie, and that's this memory machine. And to me, it was like, I think what I appreciated about it was a different take on flashbacks. It was, because we see these flashback movies all the time. And what I liked about it was the introduction to the idea of the imperfect narrator. That, yes, we are going into someone's memories, but it's still an imperfect perception of those memories. And then there's a point where there's a memory of a memory. And, and I just, I just found myself really engrossed, engaged in this idea. I mean, I will say, when I saw the trailer for this movie, I really did not want to see this movie, and
yet you made me watch it.
Yes. Well, first, I would say that I wasn't dragged to see the movie, but I was given an opportunity to see the movie for free in a big theater, and then. This is a funny experience, but I was with a few other critics, and after the movie, we're like looking at each other going, did we really just like this movie? And I found myself thinking, yeah, I actually did like this movie. And there was this begrudging, we sort of like this movie. And so wow. I brought it to you thinking, yeah, I think this is an interesting movie to talk about, whether you liked it or not. And clearly you didn't.
No, I was thinking that you punished me for making you watch Alien.
Yeah, no. Well, I think I'm going to make up for Alien and Exorcist with this one. So
I have a lot of credit in the bank after this one.
Yeah, absolutely. And so so going back to the whole gimmick, the whole memory thing. Yeah, I do like a fresh approach to this whole flashback thing. And I do like the rules and the just the mechanics and the technicals of how this technology works. And again, the trailer to me just was horrible and did not reflect, at least in my mind, how good this film is.
Well, I will tell you that I am a sucker for movies about memory, and that is, I think, going to be the topic of my next book. Mm-hmm. So when I first started watching this movie, I was like, "Oh my God!" It's fusing my love of private detectives with my newfound love of memory, and this is going to be so great. But when a movie has lines of dialogue like memories are beads on the necklace of time, I just want to jump out the window. Like, it's like, yes, I agree with you that this could have been a really interesting premise, and it did make me want to go back and watch Strange Days, but I just felt like it could have been done in a much more interesting way. And again, think about the fact that, for instance, you have all these characters again, who are surrounding our two sort of, central characters who are all, sort of racially diverse. There's a lot of like class diversity. And it's like, I just feel like really the movie is centered around the two boring white people. Like, it's like, I want the memories of the other. Like, I don't know. I agree with you that the premise is really interesting. And I loved the idea of the flawed narrator. It's, something great about Sunset Boulevard, the Agatha Christie novel, And Then There Were None, which was like recently remade into a movie. Just this idea of like a narrator that you can't trust is fascinating. But I just felt like, I don't know, I kind of felt like I want this movie to be remade in like 5 years. And then maybe it'll be really interesting. Yeah.
Well, I will say they were, boring white people, but they were boring, really good looking white people. and I mean, quite frankly, that's how you make a movie. It's the pretty people. It's the pretty people you can get attached to your story.
I'll just say that May isn't my type, but big name stars, sure. That's why Hugh Jackman got attached. Absolutely. But I just felt like, I don't know, for whatever reason, the relationship between him and May, I just found so boring. Did you feel like they had chemistry? Were you like involved, invested? Were you into it?
I was, and considering how it ultimately played out, you do start seeing those dynamics played into it. It's kind of like the fact that he falls head over heels for her and becomes obsessed. And here's where we're gonna get this a little bit of spoilery territory. She's conflicted herself in terms of her true motivations.
Yeah.
And you take that as a whole. Yeah, I believe it did work, or it clearly worked for me. And I think that's ultimately where I'm finding this movie comes down to. It's an issue of preference. And you say that there's a lot in this movie, and there is a lot, and it's what you latch yourself onto that seems to me be the issue of whether you like the movie or not. I did like the world. I liked the big world, but I wasn't so invested on it to where I needed it to be incredibly integral into the entire plot of the movie.
How would you compare Reminiscence to Blade Runner? Because to me, I just feel like they have a lot in common, but Blade Runner did it better.
Yeah, I think the difference is what you're criticizing. It's the idea of here's this world and integrating this world within the plot itself. And right. I think Blade Runner does that to where this movie doesn't. Right. And the question is for what this movie is compared to Blade Runner, is that the what's the word I wanted? What's the phrase? Is that the deal killer, so to speak?
Right.
Blade Runner. I don't think there was much of a love story in Blade Runner.
I guess to me it just felt like these pieces were taken from different movies. And then sort of it became this kind of patchwork quilt where the individual pieces never really coalesced to form a new whole. So for me, what's sort of interesting about Blade Runner is this idea of sort of remaking the private eye narrative in this sort of apocalyptic dystopia, right? Mm-hmm. Which you see in Reminiscence. And then going back to sort of the film noir, I was reminded of this movie Laura, where you have a detective who's looking into the murder of this woman, and he falls in love with her painting, right? And then there's this idea of trying to uncover, what happened to her while falling in love with her without ever really knowing her, which again, I feel like is kind of what you see in Reminiscence, right? Where he becomes obsessed with May without ever really knowing her, right? Yeah. And so you've got that element. I feel like with Strange Days, this idea of sort of like, discovering answers by going into other people's minds, right? So it's like you've got these pieces that all these other movies did better. And so for me, what just kept happening is when I was watching Reminiscence, it was like, oh yeah, I got to watch that movie again. Oh, that reminds me of that movie. That was a really good movie. Whereas I don't know that there was anything in Reminiscence where I was like, oh, that's the thing Reminiscence did best.
Yeah. Well, to me, I think what it did do best was play on this idea of memory, of these flashbacks, of the idea that not only is he obsessed, but he's obsessed with, not, you brought up, not necessarily the woman herself,
right,
but the idea of the woman and how that plays itself out. I think if there was a negative in that story or a weakness of that story is the fact that, what she ultimately becomes at the end feels a little too fairy tale to me, where I would have liked to have seen it maybe go in a little darker tone or a darker area. Because at that point it was like, well, now it becomes somewhat of a Disney movie at this point, the ending. And as much as we love to see love conquer all, I maybe she's just a little too clean for me, or came out a little too clean for me at the end.
She honestly, I mean, I know that I keep referencing other movies, but to me, as soon as I saw her in that first dress, she reminded me of Jessica Rabbit. And then I felt like, her character kind of kept being like, oh, Jessica Rabbit. But a bone to pick. So she's talking at one point in the movie about how she can't pay rent. Right. And then she goes to him the first time because she lost her keys.
Yes.
So it's like, okay, so you can afford to go to him to use this fancy machine to look for your keys, but yet you can't afford to pay your rent. Like, wouldn't you go back to your job to just look for your keys? Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, I would say that shows how much of a sap he was.
I just saw it as kind of sloppy writing.
Okay, so that's kind of our thoughts. Like I said, this is running 38% on Rotten Tomatoes. It's not doing well. Made $2 million over the weekend, but that's a whole other story. So there's definitely a difference opinion here, and I feel like it does come to preference. It does come to the moments that you latch onto a film, and whether you think they did that well. If you've seen Reminiscence, let us know what you think. Comment below. Let us know what you thought. Like, subscribe, do all that. Oh, was that?
Try to change my mind.
Yeah, try to change Dolly's mind, because clearly she's overanalyzing this. or I'm not analyzing it enough. All right. So with that, let's get out of here.